to the Therapist HQ, your weekly pep talk for private practice pros. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome back to the Therapist HQ. My name is Alicia Murray, and as always, I am so glad that you're here spending this time with me. I usually record my podcast during the day, but my day got just a little fumbled today, and so I am recording at 7:30 at night, and I feel like we are like having a cozy little hang together. So if you are listening to this at night, welcome to the Cozy Hang Gang. Like, I'm so glad that we're doing this together. I might start recording at night now. This is like very nice and relaxing. Anyways, today's episode, I want to start off with something that I've been seeing a lot lately. And I think that it's something that has gotten, I would say, worse, definitely not better. Now that so many are using AI inappropriately to write their website copy and their Psychology Today profiles. And what I mean by inappropriately is not using AI as a leverage for grammar corrections or templates or gut checks, like opening AI and saying, hey, can you write me a directory bio in X amount of characters? I'm a therapist who does X. Not a good use of AI. Okay. And you guys know I am all about ethically using AI for administrative duties. I think that it can serve its place in taking a huge load off of therapists administratively. But this is not it. Okay, this is not the way to utilize it, and this is not the way to garner any kind of results that you're looking for. So within this, here's the sentence that I want you to think about when it comes to website copy and Psychology Today profiles. Quotes, I provide a warm and supportive space for individuals struggling with anxiety, depression, trauma, and life transitions. Does that sound familiar to you? I have read that sentence or some version of it and approximately 100 therapist profiles, if not more. I wish I was exaggerating. I have been doing coaching calls, long-term coaching, audits of members inside the community, non-members inside the community, and that phrase or something close to it, similar, adjacent, shows up over and over. And I understand it. It feels safe and inclusive and like you're not leaving anybody out. But here's the problem is that it doesn't actually say anything, right? And more importantly, it doesn't do the one job that we are looking for our marketing copy to actually do. Your bio, your Psychology Today profile, even your Instagram bio, your website headline, all of that copy has a primary job. And it is not to describe your services. It is to make your ideal client immediately feel like they found exactly the right person while quietly signaling to everyone else that they might need to keep looking, and that is okay. It is a two-way door, right? And I think a lot of therapists are only thinking about one direction there. Which again, understandably, I understand feeling like you're coming from a scarcity mindset. I understand feeling like you need to get people in the door as soon as possible, regardless of fit, regardless of specialties and expertise. I get it. But today we're going to be talking about our niche and how to write your niche in a way that does both things at once. And I want you to walk away from our little chit chat today with a framework for writing niche copy that actually works. Not just copy that is technically accurate, but copy that truly, truly converts. So let's get into it. Before we get into the how, I want to name something that comes up for a lot of therapists when they even think about writing specifically about their niche, because I hear it all the time. And that is, what if I'm too specific and I turn people away? And again, I understand the fear completely that is driving this, especially if your caseload is not where you want it to be right now. When you have open slots to fill, the idea of narrowing your language feels like the opposite of what you should be doing. You want more clients, not fewer. And so your instinct is to cast this wide net and describe yourself in the broadest possible terms so you can capture more leads, you can capture more clients, right? And there's also this fear of picking the wrong niche and then being stuck with it forever or feeling like it's who you are now. Like once it's on your website, it's like a legally binding contract, right? And there's also this imposter syndrome layer on top of that of who am I to say that I specialize in this? What if somebody calls me out? What if a colleague reads my profile and thinks that I'm overclaiming? And underneath all of that is usually a belief that is so logical sounding, it almost gets questioned. More general equals more reach equals more clients. If I describe myself broadly, I'll attract more people. If I narrow it down, I'll attract fewer. Okay, sit with that for a second. And I want to be really direct with you. The belief is wrong. The belief of if I describe myself broadly, I'll attract more people. And if I narrow it down, I'll attract fewer. That is not an evidence-based belief. And I don't mean it's wrong in a general marketing sense. I mean it's specifically wrong for therapy and therapists in private practice. And I've watched this play out in both directions enough times to feel pretty confident saying that. The thing is that specificity does not shrink your pool. What it is going to do is deepen the resonance with the right part of the pool, if we're sticking with the pool analogy here. And the clients who actually become long-term clients, committed clients, the ones who stay, who do the work, who refer their friends, they find you because something in your copy made them feel seen before they ever booked the consultation. Something happened to make them feel seen and heard and understood before that consultation was booked. That was a driving factor in them converting and booking the consultation. So let me paint a picture of what actually happens when we keep using vague copy, because I think sometimes we do need to see the full cost before a change feels worth making. Because I also want to acknowledge, like, as you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, Alicia, this totally makes sense. I'm not doing it. I'm busy, Alicia. I have things going on. I hear you. Okay, I hear you. Even if you just walk away with the knowledge today, like, I'm so happy about that. But when your copy is generic, we're going to attract generic inquiries. And that's not like an unkind outlook on the people reaching out to us. I just mean that people who are searching for a therapist see your profile and think, okay, this seems fine. And then they reach out. They're not particularly lit up about working with you. They haven't had a moment of, oh my gosh, this is exactly who I need. They've just found someone who seems available and acceptable for them to start. And this can show up in a few different ways. Your consultation calls may take longer if you're offering them because you're spending time figuring out if this other person is even a good fit, or they're figuring out if you're actually a good fit, right? You're saying no more often after free consultations, which costs you time and energy. The clients who do come in are more varied in terms of what they're looking for, which means your treatment planning, your progress notes, like your approaches, everything becomes a little less streamlined because it's scattered all across the board. And your sessions are probably going to take more mental energy because you haven't built the kind of deep expertise in a specific presenting problem that makes the work feel more natural and honestly more energizing. I don't know about you, but when I sit down with my niche ideal client, I do not feel nervous going into session. I feel excited about spending that time with them. I feel excited about the work that we're doing. And when I have an outlier client who found me and has stuck with me because we are doing good work, but even going into the session and coming out of the session, like, I still feel this sense of like, gosh, like, was that enough? Like, do I think the person got what they were looking for out of that session? I need to like double back a little bit more during session and check in with them about progress. When I'm doing that work with my niche client, like, we are on the same wavelength. Like, we know the work we're doing. I know the work I'm doing, and it just flows. Like, it just works, right? And I think the thing that nobody talks about enough is that unclear marketing is, I think, a quiet contributor to burnout, dare I say. When your caseload is full of clients who are like a medium or like a lukewarm fit rather than a great fit, you can end up doing good clinical work with these people you like, but still at the end of the day feel depleted. And I think in that case, I think it's really hard to name like why, because nothing is technically wrong. Like, nothing is, the acuity of the clients isn't different. The work that you're doing feels pretty standard. And so it's hard to name the reason behind that feeling. Meanwhile, on the other end of it, the therapists who are writing clearly about who they help and what they are great at tend to fill their practices faster, give or take. They hold their rates more confidently, and they have reported finding the work time more sustainable over time. And I just don't think that those things are a coincidence. Why? Okay, so let's go ahead and figure out exactly where you are right now in this moment. If you are able, I want you to pull up your Psychology Today profile or your website or whatever directory listing you are using the most, and whichever one is the most forward facing. And I want you to run it through a few questions. First, I want you to read your bio out loud. Cringe, right? Does it describe you specifically, or could it be copy pasted into any other therapist in your state and still be accurate? If the answer is, well, honestly, probably yes, that's important information to know. The next is if a complete stranger, someone who has never been in therapy, has never looked up a therapist before, read your bio cold, would they immediately know whether they're in the right place, or would they have to read between the lines a little bit? Next is, does your copy describe the problem in your client's language or in clinical language? There's a real difference between I help clients develop distress tolerance skills and challenge cognitive distortions, all good and great, versus I work with people who feel like their emotions are running the show and they can't figure out how to turn the volume down. Both are clinically accurate, right? Only one sounds like something that a client would actually say about themselves. And next is looking at the outcome you're describing. Is this a concrete outcome? Can you picture what that person's life actually looks like when the work is done? Or are you using words like growth, healing, empowerment, and a more fulfilling life? Sorry to call you out if you are using those. And these are all words that are technically meaningful. Like, I hear you. They are technically meaningful, but they could describe almost anything. And last, this is the one that I do love. If you read your bio to your ideal client, would they lean in and think, yes, this is me? Or would they nod politely because it sounds nice, but it's not quite landing? And be honest with yourself, because that's the whole point of this exercise. And you don't have to tell anybody. You don't even have to tell me. We're just hanging out, having our little nightly hang together. Okay, this is just information for you. Okay, and now you probably know what is next, and that is, let's actually fix this, right? And the framework that I want you to use is going to be a 3-part sentence. And I want you to try to resist the urge to make it more complicated than it is. The sentence that I want you to lean on is, I help specific population with specific problem to achieve specific outcome. That is it. Every element has to be specific, and not specific in a medical record or DSM-5 way, but specific in a I can picture this person way. And I want to walk you through each piece a little, because you know me, just out here doing the most. I want to make sure that you're leaving here feeling like you can actually implement this tonight when you listen to it. So for your population is not adults, it's not individuals, it's not people struggling with mental health challenges. The population is something specific enough that a stranger could picture who you're talking about. Men in their 30s navigating a career change. New mothers who thought they'd feel overjoyed and instead feel completely overwhelmed. Adults who grew up with a parent who struggled with addiction and who are now in relationships where those same patterns are showing up. Therapists and helping professionals who are burning out and feel like they can't tell anyone. First-generation college students trying to build a life that looks nothing like the one they grew up with. Those are populations. The problem, which is the next part of the sentence, also needs to be in your client's language. This is the part that I think trips people up the most, because clients don't walk in saying, I'm experiencing generalized anxiety disorder. Or maybe they do. Mostly they don't, though, right? They walk in saying, I just can't turn my brain off at night, or I feel like I'm always waiting for something to go wrong, or I've gotten really good at holding it together in front of everyone and I am exhausted. That is the client language. If you feel like your copy is using DSM language, like you're speaking to other clinicians and not to the person who is about to Google therapist for whatever city who gets what I'm going through, time to evaluate. The outcome part of the sentence, this part needs to be concrete. A more fulfilling life, while a great end journey, is not an outcome. It's a feeling, but not really an outcome. An outcome would be to leave the therapy room knowing they have a set of real tools for when the anxiety spikes, and not just coping strategies that sound good on paper but fall apart under pressure. An outcome could also be to stop repeating the pattern of giving everything to the relationship and losing themselves in the process. These are specific. These are vivid. You can almost picture them, right? And it's something that you could actually measure if you tried. Once you use these and have a draft, I want you to run it through 3 really quick checks. And the first is a specificity check. So could a stranger picture exactly who this person is? The second is a problem check. Is this the language my ideal client would use to describe what they're going through, or is it the language that I learned in grad school? And the third is the outcome check. Is this a real change in someone's daily life, or is it something that sounds nice but doesn't actually mean anything? And then the best test, and this one is underrated, but share your draft with someone who is not a therapist. And I want you to ask them 3 questions. Who exactly would you be helping? What problem are you helping to solve? And what would change for your clients? If they can answer all of those clearly, you have got it. If they give you some vague answers back, then your copy might be too vague still. Once you've got a statement that passes those checks, you are going to put it everywhere. This is going to carry your marketing and your messaging and shape your copy across the board. Your Psych Today profile, your website headline, your about page, your Google business description, your Instagram bio, your email signature. The goal is that no matter where someone finds you first, the message is the same. Every touch point should say the same thing about who you help and why you're the right person for them. Here's the last thing that I want you to think about with this, because this is the part that changes how it feels to do the work. Your copy isn't just a marketing tool. It's also a bit of a filter for yourself. When you write clearly and specifically, the people who are not a great fit read your profile and move on. They don't feel judged. They don't feel excluded. They just recognize that this is not quite what they're looking for. And that is the filter working in action. And it means that the people who do reach out are reaching out because something in your words clicked for them. And that is the kind of consultation call that feels completely different from a triage version of a consultation call. So a few things to note before we go rewriting everything. Your niche statement is a living document. I'm having like community mental health flashbacks of treatment plans. It's a living, breathing document. Does anybody else have that? Let me know in the comments if anybody else was preached that in community mental health. Anyway, your niche statement is also a living, breathing document. It is going to change probably multiple times as your practice evolves, your approaches evolve, and you get clearer on who you love working with. The therapist who started out working with anxiety and realized over 5 years that their real love is working with women in postpartum transitions. It's a story that I hear all the time and I love to hear. Writing the best version you can right now, putting it out there, and then giving yourself permission to refine it as you learn and grow more through different seasons of your life. Your marketing copy does not define who you are legally or clinically. It does not define who you are able to see. If someone who doesn't fit your niche perfectly reaches out, and they will, you will still have outliers reach out, and you want to work with them, you can. Your niche is your marketing strategy, but it's not a limitation to your license or your clinical work. The point is not to turn people away from help. The point is to attract the clients who are your best fit so you can do your best work. If you have multiple areas of focus and you genuinely do not want to pick one, it is okay to have different messaging for different pages of your website, different networking groups or events that you go to. A trauma therapist who maybe also runs groups for parents, have a specialty page for each. Go to events that are, focused in each and come prepared with that statement for each. The key is that each page still uses specific language for that specific audience. It just means that you have 2 versions of the 3-part sentence and not one vague one, right? So you can have 2 perfectly crafted sentences rather than one vague catch-all sentence. And as always, done is better than perfect. The therapist who publishes an 80% niche statement today will outperform the therapist who has been refining one in their head for 2 years. Get it out, see what happens, and adjust it. Adjust it as you need to. No one is going to remember. Nobody is going to care. Nobody's going to notice. You already have a niche and you already know who you want to work with, but now you can write it down in a way that those people can actually find you. Okay, deep breath. We've made it through the education, the exercise, all of the good things. I do want to end with my favorite part of the podcast, Therapist in the Threads, where we dive into a Reddit thread, usually related to something that we've talked about here today, just to get some outside perspective and see what is happening on the interwebs when it comes to therapists on the internet. And notice that I use Reddit and not Facebook groups. That is on purpose. Okay, so this one comes from r/therapists, and it's titled, How Do You Find Your Niche as a Clinician? And the writer writes, I have been doing different areas in therapy, outpatient counseling, drug and alcohol counseling, intern and observed couples counseling, and saw clients for various different problems, but still don't have an area I think I do really good to say is my niche. How do you find yours? Stories are welcome. Do you sense the theme that I mentioned would be there? I still don't have an area that I think I do a really good job to say it's my niche. Very common feeling. One commenter writes, I think it takes a lot more time than people might think. I'm 6 years deep now in substance use forensics, and I finally feel more comfortable and confident. My first year, I worked out at a MAT clinic, and it was a horrible work environment that made me question if I was even in the right field. I've been with the same place of work the last several years now where I've been supported and encouraged to grow and explore. It's made me realize what I like and don't like and what I'm really good at. So there's a lot of good points in there. When you are working in community mental health and pigeonholed to a certain population because of the clinic you work at, it is really hard to develop a niche, right? Because you're not able to dip your toes in and see what it's like to work with other populations. I think that if you're in a position where you are pigeonholed in community mental health to a certain population, it is okay to take additional trainings, take additional certifications, especially if your job is willing to pay for them, and dip your toes in that way. Even if you never use that certification again, at least you have that knowledge. They can never take that from you. And now you know, right? Now you know that this is or isn't a population that excites you and that you want to work with. Another comment says, I knew what resonated most with me based on my lived experiences. I'm a combat veteran, so I knew trauma was where I wanted to go. Took a minute to get the training, but so far I'm loving it. I wanted to touch on that comment because I think the lived experience piece is so cool to integrate into your marketing and can absolutely be integrated in an ethical way. And it just gives so much cadence to your niche, right? Like I have quite literally been in your shoes. I know what you are feeling, and here is where we want to go. Okay, and last comment. For me, it's what feels right and I easily pick up, passionate about, and what makes sense in my head, as well as what I'm good at. I'm really good at storytelling, so finding foot in parts work and IFS and guided meditations to connect with the inner child are a lot of fun and really makes a huge difference in my clients' trauma healing journey. I've done my internships in different places during school time, so I got the experience a little bit of everything. So I got to work with kids, teens, play therapy adults, ADHD autistic folk, trauma, complex childhood trauma, healing from abusive relationships, couples, etc. The stuff that made me exhausted the least also had me excited the most, which is what I'm choosing to specialize in now. I chose that comment because, again, we go where our energy goes, right? Like such a good example of going exactly where your energy is taking you. All right, my friends, before I let you go, I have to tell you about just a couple things. If you are listening to this and you are in the early stages of building your practice, like still figuring out the foundational stuff like the LLC, the rates, the systems, getting your first clients in the door, I have a course called the Complete Launch Kit. This is a step-by-step program with 65 lessons that walks you through everything in the right order. So you are not piecing it together from 1,000 different places on the internet. It covers forming your business structure, setting your rates, getting your systems in place, building a basic marketing foundation, and seeing your first client. If you are in that stage, that is the perfect place to start, and it will be linked in the show notes. If you already have a practice and your marketing just feels inconsistent, like you know you need to post, you know you should be blogging, you know your Psychology Today profile needs work, but you're not actually doing any of it because you don't know where to start, that is what Therapist HQ is for. It's a private community for private practice therapists, and every week you get a marketing rundown with social media prompts, blog post prompts, community outreach ideas with templates that you can actually use and implement. You'll also get a library of expert trainings, a personal website and directory review from me at any time with real feedback, and access to a custom AI sidekick built specifically for private practice marketing. And all of that is only $37, usually less than a copay, especially for the uninsured like myself. And that will be linked in the show notes as well. And very importantly, if this episode specifically resonated with you, if you're realizing that your niche is there, but your marketing hasn't caught up to it yet, I have a course for that. Find Your Niche, Fill Your Practice. This goes much deeper on everything that we talked about today. It's built for therapists who want to get clear on their niche, write about it in a way that actually converts, and start attracting their ideal private pay clients. That is the course for everything that we just reviewed today. And as always, if this was helpful for you, I would really, really love and appreciate if you would leave a comment, subscribe, or share this with a therapist who also needs a weekly private practice pep talk. It is one of the best ways to support the podcast and get this in the hands of therapists who need it most. All right, my friends, thank you so much for spending this time with me tonight, hanging for our weekly private practice pep talk, and I will see you next week.